Hello, welcome back to the show. I'm your host, Dr. Alex Swenson Ridley. I'm really excited for today's conversation. I am joined by Erin Marcus, who has a little bit of a different background from what we normally talk about on the show, but I'm just excited for this conversation and you all are going to enjoy it too. So, Erin is the founder and CEO of Conquer Your Business, an international company helping entrepreneurs and small business owners get out of reaction mode so they can be in charge of their businesses and in charge of their lives. Having made the successful leap from corporate executive to entrepreneur, she uses that experience along with her MBA education and street smarts upbringing to help her clients reach heights they have never dreamed possible and have fun doing it. She's an international speaker and the host of Ready Yet podcast and the author of the upcoming book by same name. So Erin, welcome to the show.
Thank you. Thank you. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, so we, in our conversation before I hit record, we had all kinds of fun nuggets that we were both dropping. So
what are we going to talk about now?
Yeah, we're going to have a really great conversation. And just to, give context to this conversation for our listeners, this is coming off of a group conversation that I had with my coaching clients around, a lot of the women that I work with, and I know who are listening to this, we're in high leadership roles. Some of us are entrepreneurs, some of us might be in the corporate world. And that struggle of like when something's really not a fit or, being pushed to, we were having a conversation around just kind of being a woman in a man's world and, how we're pushed to either be somebody we're not, or, if we step into that role and really powerfully, we're considered a bitch. Like there's all kinds of, just crap that comes with the world that has been defined by men thus far. So I'm just curious to kind of hear your story and your journey, because I know you have a corporate background and then you've stepped into entrepreneurship and you have other stories too. So, but let's start there.
Awesome. Well, thank you. So here's what's really interesting for me is I've made those transitions, but without as much angst, trauma, anger that befalls so many people. And I don't know if it's because I left before that happened, or I was just, the people I worked with were amazing. I was just amazingly fortunate, but I've been very, very heavy in male dominated industries before my most recent position. And I say that like it was recent, it was like 2011 when I left, but I was at Cushman & Wakefield, which is an international real estate firm, commercial real estate, very male dominated, but I worked on the most successful female commercial real estate team in the Chicago suburbs, where I had amazing mentors in these women who showed me how to maneuver through a male dominated field without a chip on my shoulder, without having to be a bitch. I have never felt, and I know this, I grateful for it, I've never felt I wasn't allowed to be me. Now, I dealt with sexism, misogyny, I dealt with all of that, outright harassment, borderline assault, but in terms of management, I never had a problem. I had problems with other people, but in terms of the management that I worked under, when I left there, and what was really the crux of my corporate career, I became the senior vice president of business development for the largest long-term care insurance wholesaler in the country. That nobody knows what that means, so don't worry about it. But
It's a long title.
Don't worry. Yeah, it was very fancy. It does not fit on a business card. I was putting national and regional relationships together between banks, broker dealers, financial planners, and the insurance companies that produce the long-term care insurance product. And so we were the middleman, and that was a very male dominated field. But once again, I was allowed to be an entrepreneur within that corporate role. I had amazing mentors who brought me into every room, put me at every table, way above my pay grade. And yeah, I was following a path that eventually I didn't want anymore. But at the time, I don't know that I felt trapped by it. I didn't know there was other paths available because, I grew up blue collar, 70s and 80s. You get a job, you stay with the job, you get a job, you stay with the job. My parents always thought I was crazy that I would leave and go get another job. But I was a the wholesaler for 12 years. But I got to a point, even with all that great stuff, working with great people, having amazing opportunities, getting a great education, I still got to the point when I was around 39, maybe, that there was something else. All of a sudden, as hard as I worked in promotions and all the cool things, all of a sudden, it felt like I was missing something. And the only word I could come up with, and it's kind of an unfair word because it has a more of a negative connotation than I intended to, is the work felt contrived. The insurance system is so complicated, and it's created to be complicated so that more pieces of the puzzle are needed so that more businesses can make more money. But I no longer felt like I was having impact on it. Like, what was I doing? I was doing work because there was work to do.
Right.
But why was there work? Why was that work there? Like, it was weird, right? I don't know. Like, can you have midlife crisis at 40? Is that how that works? Is that when that happens? I don't know. It just all of a sudden didn't feel right anymore. And it took me a while to figure out how to leave and what I wanted to do. That was the other piece that I never knew what I wanted to do. I never knew what I never got a job thinking this is what I want to do in the world.
Yeah.
Right. I got a job. I did a good job. And then the promotion or the next job became possible. And then I did a good job at it. And then the promotion or the next job became possible. And so I followed the money and I followed the path, but I had never stopped and said, this is what I want to do with my life until I was 40 years old.
And I mean, I want to say kudos for recognizing that, because I know a lot of people who would just keep doing the job for the money. And, it's like we work for 40 years and then we retire, and then half the time they're going back to work now.
Right.
It's not enough.
That didn't quite work. The way that was supposed to work is not the way that is currently working.
Yeah,
absolutely. And I think truthfully, and I know we're female focused here, but I think men have that worse than women.
Yeah, I agree.
They have that. They get trapped worse than women do because of their sense of financial obligation, not just what the actual obligation is, but their sense of financial obligation is even stronger than what people get trapped by, well, truthfully, now that we mention it, you get trapped by insurance. You get trapped in your job by needing health insurance.
Yeah.
I talk to people all the time who want to launch their business, and they talk to me as that business success coach. They want to launch it the right way. What can we do? And they think that they have to wait until Medicare because they can't afford the health insurance if they leave their job, or they have to wait until the kids are grown and on their own with their own insurance. Or I mean, that literally is, in my opinion, one of the number one things trapping people in jobs that they don't want.
I would agree with you. I actually, right before we were recording this, I was talking with one of my clients who is an entrepreneur, but she desperately needs help, and she's like, I can't do that until I can offer health insurance and yada yada. And I'm like, no, just to give it, just to get.
You and I have a different approach. To me, there's always a way, right? My favorite question: in a world of infinite possibilities, how could I do this?
Yeah. And get creative with it.
Get creative with it. If you want it bad enough, if you want it, then the way is there. You just probably need to think about it differently. And especially, here's the thing, especially if you come out of corporate, because you're really, really taught this is the way to do it. And it's not. That was a big old shock to me. Guess what? Not the way. It's a way. It's a lot of people. It's a way, not the way. That was a big shock. The first business that I had, I had part-time employees with not set hours, and we had no idea month to month what the hours were going to be, where it was going to be. And I thought there'd be no way I could find team members who wanted to do that. And like there was this whole universe of people who really wanted to do that, and just had no idea. So that was a pleasant surprise.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think being willing, like, we have to look at what stops us, right? Like there's always going to be something. And when we're talking about, what you shared is like had a great job and a great career, but it wasn't really attached to any passion for you. Is what it sounds like. Like you recognized that you had a purpose to serve in the world, and that was not
it. Was attached to the people I was working with and how interesting it was to grow and create and change things with them, because they were definitely at the forefront of the industry. So it was very intellectually interesting. And that was cool, and that was great. And then I think just as I got older, I felt like something was missing for me. Like I wanted to guide that, not just be a part of it, but I wanted to guide that a little bit more.
And, just to give some context for everybody, like I'd always been an entrepreneur, but I reached this point where it wasn't that I didn't want to still be a business owner, but like I was on a path with my career. And we talked about this a little bit earlier, as we're recording this, I just had kind of this big breakthrough of realizing how traumatic my experience as a chiropractor was, like emotionally, not just physically. And I hit this point where I'd bought a 6,000 square foot building, and I had a staff of 12 people. And, we were billing out over 7 figures and collecting like just shy of that. And, I walked upstairs to my beautiful new office and just like collapsed on the floor, realizing this is not the dream. And similar, like I felt trapped. I mean, I like owned a building and was responsible for people's jobs and like all this stuff. But I realized that I was not doing something that served me and filled me up. And I'd hit massive burnout, which I don't think you had gotten to that point yet, but maybe you had.
No, I don't know that I was burnt out. I became ambivalent. I just wasn't doing as good a job. My focus, for someone who had been a high achiever for a really long time, my focus started to be outside of work, which you want to have balance, but I've always had, not always, like I was a horrible teenager, but as an adult, I've always had a drive to succeed. And when that went away entirely, it was one of the things like, well, there's got to be a different way then. If the drive to succeed that I had had for so long, because again, I was like 39, 40 years old when this was happening. So I had been in a adult working role for 20 years. And that drive had always been there. And now all of a sudden I just didn't care. My version of introspection is to kind of observe how I behave. Mm-hmm. I don't know if that's normal. It's kind of hindsight, I guess, but like, wow, how weird is it that I'm doing that, right? How weird is it? Wow, how weird was that thought, right? It's a little bit of neutral observer, curious observer of, that was weird. You don't usually do that, right? So, and then, well, what? I wonder why.
So I'm curious now, just thinking about like, I have, like, just to give you some context of clients, and we can maybe talk about how you transition, like not necessarily even like starting a business, but just if you are feeling stuck. Like, for example, I have a client that, she's a professor. She really actually doesn't like teaching. She wants to be writing, have a blog, like, impact the world in that way. And but she's been so nervous to do that, largely because of paycheck, but also like she tried really hard not to get tenured. Like she did not want it, and then she still got it.
There's people who would kill for it, right?
Yeah. So like, some of us, are rather passive aggressive in how we approach things and don't just like jump in. And I know you shared that you maybe had a little bit of that in your space too with how you got out. But
What was interesting and the hardest part for me, and where it starts, and my clients just roll their eyes when I say this, but this is where it always starts. And what I've learned is whatever it is you're dealing with, whether it's leaving corporate, an interpersonal relationship, physical health, like anything, the very first question is, what do you want?
mm-hmm.
The first question is, what do you want? And I will tell you, I knew I didn't want to be at that job anymore, but it took me a couple years to figure out what I wanted. And at the time, I had not yet done the personal development side of my life. So, and again, my default was just to like observe my behavior. So I started out online, like investigating things I was interested in. So this is where it gets weird. The two things that I was involved with heavily at the time was bodybuilding, powerlifting, that life, health, nutrition, and dogs. Okay. So, right. So I was in the gym. I was competitive powerlifter. We were, that was boxing at the time. And then I was also volunteering every week at a dog rescue and training dogs. And I had trained dogs forever. So those were the two things that I loved. And so I looked into those for jobs. I looked at opening a doggy daycare with a facility and the grooming and the pets, like the whole big delusions of grandeur on that.
Yep.
And I also looked into buying a gym.
Okay.
And I never pursued it because the thing that held me back was I knew I didn't want to be tied to a physical location from 6 o'clock in the morning till 10 o'clock at night type of thing. Like I knew that piece of it freaked me out enough that I never moved forward. And interestingly, and then I got a really good piece of advice that most people don't get to earn a living from their passion. That when you turn your passion into a job, now it's a job, not your passion. So the trick is to get a job, have a business, earn an income in a way that uses your zone of genius, that lights you up, and so that you can make enough money to support the passion.
That's good.
And I followed that path. Mm-hmm. And so because I came out of the world of long-term care insurance and I knew that market, what I did was I purchased a franchise in that arena and adjacent to it anyway, same market. Because I knew how to run a business. I knew the market. I knew I wanted to help people as part of my business. I knew I wanted to have a small team of people. Like it checked so many boxes. I knew there was going to be a wide variety of things I was going to have to learn how to do. So it checked that, like in my strengths finders, like learner is number 2. So it checked that box. It gave me the freedom to still volunteer with the dogs. So I did that. And from there, developed what I'm doing now. Right. And I think if I'm going to go back, what do you want? What do you want? And then also, this is not a forever decision. You kind of like, if what you want doesn't work, you get to want something else. Right? Like people think, right? People make all these we treat, especially women, we treat every decision as if it's the only time I ever get to make that decision. When that's almost never, like, I think having kids is the only time and there's a forever decision.
Yeah.
Right?
That's probably true.
Right? There's no forever decision. And yet we act like if I don't come up with the exact perfect thing, I'm not used to my haircut, sorry. If I don't come up with the exact perfect thing, we're going to be stuck with that thing. No. it's letting go, right? It's letting go of, like, I'm not a big fan of, hey, I'm just going to try this because I think it's not strong enough to create, and things aren't easy, right? Things aren't easy. Entrepreneurship isn't easy. So if you're just going to try it and just dabble, it's not going to work.
Yeah.
But at the same time, don't get so attached to it that you throw good money after bad, that you make bad decisions, that you know, right? That you go into the spiral of doom unnecessarily.
Yeah.
Because most of the time, when you're trying to figure out what you want, there's a vision, but the how isn't attached.
Mm-hmm.
Because the vision is so far out ahead, you almost can't even figure out, like, you shouldn't even worry about it, and just keep moving towards the vision and assess it. I assess constantly. This is crazy. I assessed almost monthly, if not weekly, if everything that I'm doing is moving me closer to the vision or farther away from the vision. And so I remake those decisions constantly.
Mm-hmm. That's good. There's a quote that's coming to mind. I think it's reach for the stars because at the very least you'll hit the moon or something along those lines, right?
Right. Like, if I don't, right. I mean, setting the $1 million goal is what lets you hit $500,000. If you only set the $500,000 goal, you're only going to hit 100K.
Right.
Not that that's bad, but like,
right.
Whatever it is, aim higher.
Mm-hmm.
Not
and don't
because,
be afraid to.
right. Well, and not because everybody has to make $1 million. No, but because you feel you have a right to, and you feel that you can if you wanted to, and you feel that you don't need permission for it. Just cause. I tell people, it's one of the scariest things you could do. Expect more from yourself. It's a scary thing to do, but expect more from yourself. Not from a beat yourself up place, but from powerful creator place.
Yeah. Because we are so much capable of so much more than we allow ourselves to be. And you know,
like,
we get stuck in.
What if anything were possible? What does that look like? You'd be so, I mean, look at all the crazy, like, lunatic crazy people on TikTok and Instagram making tons of money doing the most random ass stuff, but it's fun. You know, I'm not talking about like the lying influencers. I'm talking about the authentic people.
Yeah.
Like, I can't get over, this is like, makes me sad. I am highly, highly, highly involved right now with Emmanuel the emu and the fact that he's not doing well. Like, this is not okay with me. Mm-hmm. And I watch like these videos of people who are living their dreams of these things you'd never think possible.
Yeah.
It's the authenticity piece, right? The don't follow the path, the authenticity piece.
Yeah. And this is huge. I'll just share this I'm recording a solo show right after this. We're going to talk about this too, but it's a good refresher. I was in a retreat over the weekend, and one of the things that was talked about that really stuck out to me is we are the resource of our time and money. And so much we feel like, we have scarcity, we don't have enough, we have to, not be ourselves in order to make the thing, or, mine was very much like chiropractic world was driven by a male dominated, whatever you want to look at, but like, where no, you just give and give and give your time. And like, I didn't feel like I authentically showed up in that at all. And so is it a surprise I burned out? No, not really.
No, it's not maintainable.
Yeah. And it's that permission to be different. Like, we don't have to do it the way everyone else has done it, because then you lose your authenticity.
And and I tell people the only thing, like, I do marketing and business strategy and sales training. That's easy. The reason it's easy is because you can buy it.
Yeah.
You can buy it. The hard work is the mindset work. And the reason it's hard is because no one can do it for you. You can guide people. I can guide people. There's people who can guide people, but no one can do it for you. But the absolute one thing that nobody can tell you is what you want.
Yeah,
Nobody can tell you what you want. You have to figure that part out.
you do. And until you do, you're going to buy every program or follow every rabbit hole and chase every silver bullet. We talk about health on this show. I talk a lot about weight because so many women struggle with their weight. This applies to that too, ladies.
It applies to everything.
Yeah.
It applies to everything.
Relationships. Yeah. All of it.
And there's a big difference between getting help, meaning knowledge and guidance, and giving away, it's not my words, like giving away your power. That's just not me, the way I would say
Yeah.
it, but I come up with another word. So that's what we're using. But giving away your power to someone else to make your decisions, like that, to me, that's my bottom line. If people would rather go broke and they'd rather suffer heartache than have a difficult conversation. The most difficult conversation you can have is an honest one with yourself.
Yep.
And because we don't do this, people who are not vested in us end up making our decisions for us. The boss gets to decide how much money you make. Well, why should somebody else decide how much money I make? Right? Like,
yeah.
One of the surprise things that I've loved about entrepreneurial world, and I come out of a great collaborative corporate environment, and yet it's inherently scarcity thinking and competition, because if you want a promotion, there's only one of them.
Right.
If you want a promotion and 3 other people want a promotion and there's only one promotion to get, that's inherent scarcity thinking, inherent competition.
Yeah.
But the number one type of person I have on my podcast to help them get their word out are people who do exactly the same thing I do. Because it's collaboration and abundance. There's millions of people who need help.
Yeah.
They're not going to all want to work with me. Right? We know this. We know this. I am not everybody's lobster, right? I mean, we know this.
Yeah.
And it's hard to unlearn. Like, it's such a different way of thinking about the world.
It really is. And it's so ingrained. Like, I've even had assistants who have been like, well, do you want to interview this person? Because they do like exactly the same thing that you do. And I'm like,
yes,
yeah, I do. That's a good conversation.
Right? Are they articulate? Do they have a good story? Yes, that's who we want.
Yeah.
100%. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Really, really great stuff. So, for those listening to the show that are, I mean, we've hit like this first step. You gotta have to figure out what you want, especially if you're feeling like you're in that place of like being unsure. And I've talked a lot about, I've had like a shifting identity, and maybe we can dive into this a little bit this year, because, this is another thing that we do. And I don't know that it's more women than men, maybe. I have no stats on that, but of like being defined, part of what defines us is what we do, right? So like I was very much
thing. That's a very
yeah. We'll just go that's good. I like that. Not really, but so like chiropractor was like my identity for a decade. And then it was like, not what I really wanted, but divorcing myself, like separating myself from that identity, and even from what I do now, because it's like, especially if you're in the entrepreneurial world, you have to have that separation between like your business and who you are, even if like who you are is part of what, if you are the brand, you still need that degree of separation. So I'm just curious in your own journey, because obviously you went from one world into another world. Like,
so the first part was easy because my definition wasn't just this corporate person, but it was a successful corporate person. And right. I think the success came first. And then the franchise system, I was very successful very quickly. So I was fine because I had that consistency in my identity of someone who succeeds. Where it all fell apart was after I closed that franchise sold thing, you know, I shut that down and made another switch and was not as instantly successful. And that's when I had my crisis of confidence.
Yeah.
Because I'd gotten promotion, new job, fancy, yay. And then all of a sudden, I couldn't figure anything out to save my life. Like nothing was working. Like I said, 2018, Erin's year of failure. And I say that now, as you can tell, with no emotion attached to it, because I know I couldn't do what I did now if I wouldn't have gone through that. But I can look back and see why things didn't work and what I had to learn and how, you know, and now I can help people through that same path. But that's when the crisis of confidence hit. And also, as you're saying, because even though I was in a relationship, the other thing that was happening at the time for me is my other identity was in that physical thing. Oh, she's a bodybuilder, she's a power lifter, she's a boxer, she's very in shape, she's very strong, blah, 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 blah. That had also fallen apart through age, through injury, through not having the money to do what I needed to do, or feeling like I didn't have the money to do what I needed to do to get the healthcare that I needed to get to solve the problems. I was no longer able to so I had massive crisis of confidence because I was no longer the successful business person, and I was no longer the the strongest girl at the gym.
Yeah.
So that was fun. Right.
Not at all.
Like not even a little.
Yeah.
But the universe is always working for you. I never would have gone down the introspection path that I did that now makes me really good at what I do if I wouldn't have hit that point. And right, and learning self-worth, like no one can tell you what you're worth. No one can tell you the intrinsic worth as a human, how to move through those things, the tools to get through those things. And the other thing because I've been listening lately to some podcasts, like this is normal. I thought I just sucked, but this is actually normal. Like this is the journey that you don't find highly successful entrepreneurs who haven't had this journey, because it takes what you've learned through this journey to become highly successful entrepreneurs.
Yeah.
And you know, so my advice is keep going. When you're going through hell, keep going, right?
Yeah.
Grab onto tools, right? I grabbed onto a couple of tools. You learn them, you know, if there was a book to read, if there was a free ticket to an event, right? I mean, I was there. Double down on it. And I think that's the resilience, right? In the moment of it all falling apart, are you going to step away or are you going to double down on it?
Yeah. And in that moment, you have a choice to make, right? It's play it safe and,
what do you want? And how bad do you want it?
Yep.
What do you want? And the other thing, how bad do you want it? I can tell you the solution of me getting out of Erin's year of failure and going from making $11,000 that year. Now, put this in perspective, just for fun. Just for fun. Corporate executive, expense account. They paid for my MBA. Top 10 in a 200 office franchise model. 15 employees. Blah, 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 blah. $11,000.
Big contrast.
Big contrast. Little bit of crisis of confidence, right? But I went from $11,000 to multiple six figures in a couple of years because I doubled down on what do I have to do to get through it. And the answer is not work harder. The answer is not do more of it. The answer is not pound it harder and feel worse about everything. You cannot, right? You cannot get yourself out of the hole if all you're doing is thinking about the hole.
You just dig it further.
Oh, look a hole. Oh, look a hole. Oh, look a hole. Right? I mean, right?
Still falling.
Still digging. Yeah, I mean, and the other thing, just to circle back on something you mentioned, going back to what do you want and leaving corporate and knowing what to do. I had no idea what I wanted. So what I did was I started to play with things. I volunteered. I went and played with something to see how it felt. Because for me anyway, I don't get my great ideas sitting alone in my office.
Yeah.
I have to be out in the world. I have to be experiencing something. I have to be doing something. So, yes. Go play with, if you're not sure, if you know you're in a spot that you no longer want, but you don't know what to do, just go play with a few things. Like, go to an entrepreneurial networking event. You'll hear people introduce themselves in jobs you never knew existed. Go do something that lights you up so that you can tap into that inner voice.
Absolutely. And I love that word play. You know, a lot of us are missing that. And I don't mean just like, you know, it can be childlike play, but you know, if we approach it without the stress and like, oh my gosh, I have to make this work, or I need to figure this out right now, or like, I just hate my life, all that stuff. And just like start to explore and have fun. Like have fun with it. This is new for me, a new shift in how I'm approaching my business. It's like, how can I like have fun writing content or, you know, coaching my clients, like whatever it is, like where's the
and I said that coming out of corporate, because again, I didn't leave a job I hated. And what I used to say was, and I'll still say it occasionally, it just hasn't been a problem for a while, I didn't leave 6 figures to be miserable. If it's not fun, odds are I'm not going to do it very long. Like, that's one of my core values. I can't do it very long if it's not at least marginally a good time.
And I think, you know, here's your permission, ladies listening to this. There's permission to actually enjoy what you do.
Get to enjoy. The one thing I've always felt, again, core value, you get one chance at this. Meaning your life. And I just refuse to waste it. It doesn't mean that I'm, you know, running around here on fire 24/7, but I refuse to sit back and let it happen without any of my own influence into it.
Life isn't something that happens to us, right?
That's
creating it.
And I think it's unfortunate that so much of our media and our norms are around letting other people make all your decisions for you and taking whatever's left over. Just take that. And I don't mean from a righteous indignation. I can't stand that. But from a passive okayness with it. Like, without even realizing, wait a minute, I could do something different. Because, like, so one of the things that we've realized is the situation doesn't actually dictate the outcome. The person does. Now, when COVID hit, Broadway theater got shut down, catering got shut down, hospitality got shut down. But some people immediately went out and did something else. And some people sat there and wallowed for 2 years about what they lost. So do you always get everything you want? No. Is it up to you whether or not you get something? 100%.
And, you know, it shows there's always adapting to do. Like we create in any given moment. We have to pivot. We have to adapt. We have to change. Like
The fact that I'm getting to talk to you right now is a perfect example of this, because the number one way that I got my clients was networking and speaking. And in March 1st of 2020, I had 35 speaking gigs booked for the year.
Oh, wow.
And by March 31st, I had 0.
Yeah.
I learned a whole new way to talk to people.
Yeah.
I presented on Zoom to hundreds of people. I didn't know how to do that. I could do this, right? But I didn't know how to do that before.
Yeah.
I learned how to make just as much money without getting on an airplane and eating crappy food in banquet halls.
Mm-hmm.
And now I get to do both. Now I know 2 things instead of 1 thing.
Yeah. It's huge.
Yeah. Like, it doesn't always look like it in the moment. And you got to give yourself your space, right? Give yourself a space, set your timer. I'm gonna give my 10 minutes, pity party galore, 10 minutes. And when that timer goes off, game on, right? You don't have to not have the emotions. You don't have to not have the sad. I don't recommend like setting up camp in it.
Yeah. Yeah. Something I've been saying a lot with my clients and working on myself is, allow space for processing the emotions, right? Like, I think where a lot of us run into trouble is we try to be like, tamp them down. I've been a queen at this. It's like, nope, don't feel like I intellectualize the crap out of it. And I'm just like, okay, I'm good, I'm moving on. But it still lives in our body, right? So like, give yourself the space to process, but don't wallow. Like, don't just stay stuck there. It's
don't wallow.
Process and move forward, release. Like, we're processing to.
I never understood what that meant. Like, it took me so long. You have to process your feelings. What does like for the longest, I'm so like you. I'm like, this is logical brain. Like, what does that even mean? Like, somebody tell step 1, step 2, like what? Right? I could not, don't understand. And I think what I've learned to do, feel them, don't attach meaning to them.
Yes.
Right? Allow myself to be sad, angry, excited, whatever it is, without any attachment. And then the other thing that I do, and this is my literal step 1, 2, 3 of processing feelings, I write down in my journal all the things that are bothering me. Like, so I write down the bad thing I'm thinking, the story I'm telling myself, and then I write the word no, and then I circle it. And then I write the new thing instead. So I'm literally, that's my 3-step process to processing how I feel. I'm acknowledging it, right? I'm acknowledging it without attachment. I'm getting out of my body by physically writing it down. I'm acknowledging it. And then I'm choosing whether or not I want to keep it. And if I don't want to keep it, I'm creating what I want instead. Yeah. So I don't know if that's right. I don't know if I'm even on the right track with that. Currently what I'm doing. And then, yes.
I don't think there's a right or wrong way. It's what works for you, right? And, if it's, and I do a similar process. It's like, I get clear on what's not working, like what's not going the way I want it to. And then I'll write down, like, what do I actually want?
What I want instead.
And then I focus on that.
Right. I did a Facebook post a couple weeks ago. My friends who know me were laughing at me. Take a walk, take a shower, take a walk, take a shower, take a walk, take a shower. Like, I was going through some things. And it's fall. We're in the northwest suburbs of Chicago. We had a beautiful fall. The colors are amazing. The weather, until today it's cold, has been amazing. And Mike and we did like a 3-hour walk, and I'm like, and just let it out. But I'm out in nature. Right. So I'm in this calm, beautiful, majestic, bigger than me environment. I'm releasing it all by just And then when I get home, I take the very long hot shower. And that's where I come down, right? That's where the energy drops. I'm now relaxed. That's where I say to myself, okay, in a world of infinite possibilities, what can I do about this? That's when the ideas come. And so I'm like, good news, bad news. I've lost a couple pounds. Bad news, we have no hot water, right? The gas bill is through the roof. Right? And
it's okay.
That's the process. That is the current
Yeah.
process. So take a walk,
Well,
take a shower, and writing it all down.
yeah. And what you just described actually is for women, there's the fight, flight, or freeze response, which is they've shown is actually a little more like the fight version is a little more male oriented, and women actually need to tend and befriend. And so we need to, make sure everyone's okay and then like go talk it out. And so
Yeah,
you're
and I
talking it
tend to
out and
white
calming
gas.
your nervous system.
I tend to err on the side of quite masculine energy. So I have
Yeah.
to intentionally do this
Yeah.
because my instinct is not that
Right.
warm and fuzzy.
Yeah.
I've had to learn how to do it.
And it's all a learning process, and we figure out what we need. Like I went through a kind of intense, like just realization and perspective shift on myself over the weekend around some trauma. And yesterday I was so exhausted, and we were actually traveling, like we were out of town, we were at a hotel, and like I could not wake up. I slept for 9 hours and then I took a 2 hour nap. And I've never done that. And my husband, I don't think he like knew what was going on, but he took our 9-year-old and was like, we'll go. Like,
I remember when I took back in college, when I took the GRE, I slept forever. And this
yeah,
is, but again, my background is working out and dogs. The two ways to exhaust your dog is run them around the block a bunch of times or just do 15 minutes of training. Mental exhaustion is just as legitimate as physical exhaustion for most. We are mammals, it does work that way.
Yeah. And sometimes part of the release is that it's sleep. Let's go for a walk. I then took a hot shower. Hot showers are definitely a key.
I got one of those waterproof pads.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, Erin, thank you so much for sharing your wealth of knowledge and wisdom and just having this conversation. It was a lot of fun. How can people connect with you if they want
Sure,
more Erin in their life?
Real easy, real easy. Conqueryourbusiness.com. The name of the business is Conquer Your Business. So if you just go one place, it has all the different ways to reach me, all the different things going on. There's a bunch of free resources. So I love meeting people and hearing what's going on in their lives. So conqueryourbusiness.com, just that easy.
Awesome. And any final parting words of wisdom? I mean, we've dropped a lot of stuff in here. So
my thing is don't give up.
Yeah.
Right. I mean, it's don't give up, fall down 7 times, get up 8. And my favorite quote, one of my absolute favorite quotes is actually from Winston Churchill. Success is the ability to go from failure to failure with no lack of enthusiasm.
Yeah.
It's your life. Go create it. Don't let anything decide it for you.
I love that. I think that's a very powerful place to end. So
Awesome.
Everybody listening, go create. And I appreciate you.
Thank you.